Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about some friggin' books that I have recently read. So most of these books I actually started back in June or the beginning of July, and they took me forever because, as previously seen in my July reading vlog that I did, which was just a silly video showing that I really didn't read in July. The first book I'm going to talk about is Romanov by Samar Provost, and this I read on my Kindle. It is a NetGalley arc that I had from last fall. Yeah, horrible fail there. And this one is a paranormal adult urban fantasy. The premise basically is the Romanovs of Russia, as in like Anastasia, their family, but as vampires in modern day world. The story starts off with the patriarch of the family being killed, and then the rest of the family, the mother, and then Anna and her brother, fleeing to Seattle. They were in New York first, and then they fled to Seattle. And while they're there, Anna meets a mortal human boy that she starts kind of digging. But in the midst of all of this, her family is being hunted still by our good friend Rasputin. And also these other demon creatures. There's like a portal that opens up and creatures are coming in, and they have to try to take care of that while also dealing with Rasputin. So I thought this was a really interesting plot. Obviously, that's why I requested the arc on NetGalley. I ended up not totally loving it, just mostly because I feel like it just could have used more editing. Most of the NetGalley arcs I get, the formatting is all crazy. I think that's just how they kind of are. But with this one, there was like some punctuation issues and just like randomly sentences ending and then like starting a new one totally different with like incorrect like capitalization and stuff like that. That kind of threw me off. It was also kind of repetitive, the writing. It was one of these things where like the author seemed to be, instead of describing things in different ways, was just like repeating the facts to you, and you're like, okay, I get it. And then, like I said, there was like a portal that opened up, so there's all these other demons and creatures, and then through the whole book there's this pale creature who's basically like stalking everyone, and it wasn't totally explained necessarily, or it was kind of confusing to me anyway. And the dialogue was a big thing for me also, that it was just kind of cringy, real cringy in the romantical realm for those conversations. Dialogue is a thing for me that I care about, so that bothered me. So overall, I ended up giving it on my 1 to 10 scale a 3.66, which translates to 2 Pashinacorns. So it was kind of a miss for me. Then there were 2 NetGalley arcs that I had that I ended up DNFing. One of them isn't even on NetGalley anymore because I was like going back to see like what the synopsis was so I could tell you guys. One of them isn't even on there anymore. So like I don't know what that's about. That one was called Dracora. I'll put a picture up if I can find one. The other one was Dragonheart by Linda A. Malcor. I DNF'd this one at like maybe 20%. And this one, the synopsis is like hell on Goodreads. It's very long. You can go look it up if you want. It's dragons and dragon lords, and it's this world that it felt like a kind of Middle Eastern, you know, they're in like the desert and the rolling desert sands and whatever, kind of like an Arabian type vibe, which was cool. And there's dragons, which I love. And in this one, people can ride dragons, but dragons are also like conscious, sentient beings that like can speak, which I'm not opposed to that. But right out of the gates, things in the story were kind of rubbing me the wrong way. They just weren't my jam. Like at the very beginning, the main character, can't remember his name, is fleeing from these caves, and there's all these like demon creatures chasing after him, and one of them is riding like a dragon after this main character, and he's like in the heat of battle, he gets a boner, and it's described as his like engorged member like proudly going into bed. Like it was just weird, and I didn't like it. I was like, oh, that's gross. Ew. Like, it just was kind of weird. I don't know, I just wasn't that into it. So that's that. Then the last actually NetGalley arc that I had was, the name changed apparently. On Goodreads it's called Fire, and then it's the Ninth Circle #1. On NetGalley it was just called the Ninth Circle. At any rate, it's by C.A. Harland. In this one, we are following 3 sisters, Tala, Ava, and Hartley. They are demon hunters living in Ireland. Ava stepped away from the family business. Their mother passed away. Their mother was a demon hunter and trained them. Ava steps away from the family business until Hartley goes missing, and then Ava and Tala are on a mission to go find their sister. And she is somewhere among the demon gangs of Ireland and in the underworld of Ireland, and they aren't sure where, but they need to find her. And in this world, basically there are like the gangs, okay? And there's like the different circles, and they're basically different levels. So like Circle 1 is like low level, whatever. And then Circle 9, the 9th circle is like up there, like the big boss, right? And to like the mortals and normal people, it's just, oh, it's the gang activity. But like they know it's the demon world and the underworld. It's a really cool concept, very interesting. I really liked the concept, and I liked the story overall. Like my enjoyment level was pretty good throughout the majority of this book. It was action-packed, so it kept my interest, but then it kind of started feeling like too much action. Like it was like subplot. We're gonna go here. Oh, now this other person wants us to do this job for them. Oh, this fairy stopped in and needs us to help her, but Luke, we still have to find her sister. Okay, and sometimes it was relevant, and like sometimes there was overlap, but sometimes there wasn't. And sometimes the overlap was very contrived. Like this little sub-story, sub-adventure they went on really had nothing to do with the overarching one, but then the author just threw in like, oh, then this demon from the underworld that's like kidnapped their sister shows up while they're on this other sub-adventure, right? So it just felt kind of unnecessary to have like so much shit going on, and it got a little convoluted for me. So this one on my 1 to 10 scale, I got 5.33, middle of the road, ends up being 3 push-unicorns. And then I was sent the next book by the author. They reached out to me to see if I would be interested in reading it, and upon reading the synopsis, I was like, frick yeah. And the book in question is The Keyshe Tales from Assuan by Antoine Bandel. The plot here, I'll just read right from the back because it's pretty short. It says, it's an African fantasy based on the Angola folklore of the Keyshe. So it says, the Keyshe, shape-shifting demons who lure young women to gruesome deaths. They can't be real, can they? Something has slain a villager, and the locals of Bajok point their fingers at Amana, a pacifist monk running from his dark past. But Amana knows there's something else, something much darker lurking in the shadows. Can he save the village, his name, and his principles? To save one would mean the sacrifice of the others, if he has the strength. This book, I mentioned when I hauled this, that the cover is a little aggressive for me personally. The artwork is beautiful though. Like that's like someone like drew this or painted it or whatever. Just the image is unsettling to me, but I mean, I guess that's the point. They're supposed to be unsettling. They're demons. So yeah, I was super down for this because I love some African mythology, African folklore. It's just so different from a lot of the stuff you see. I mean, folklore and mythology of any kind, really. So I was very interested in this, and it was a really cool world. The world building was good. Like I saw the world, but you didn't get that much of the world. But I think from what I can understand from the series in general, it's like the Tales from Assuan, and the next book is like a different bit of mythology. I don't know if they're linked together or not, or if they're kind of like just standalone companions in this overall world. I'm not totally sure. So if that's the case, then that makes sense, because it seems like with each book you're gonna get like a bigger picture of the larger world. But of this like village and this contained world, it was described very well. Like I could see the scenery, I could see the people. It kept my interest. The only kind of critique I really had were that there were parts of the plot where I wasn't bored, but there were parts where it could have been tighter, I feel like. And then dialogue. I thought the dialogue could use a little bit of editing, because I found myself in a few places not being able to differentiate between different characters. Like their voice was kind of the same. On my 1 to 10 scale, I gave this 5.66, which is 3 Pushinicorns. So yeah, middle of the road for me. I definitely enjoyed it though. So I think I will for sure pick up the next one and buy the next one. So thank you again to Antoine for sending this to me. And if you want some different, unique, not just, Western and European mythology-based fantasy, I would suggest picking this up and checking it out. I am sweating. So then we have the next book, The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. And this was the group buddy read that Elliot Brooks put together. And I've been hearing all the hype about this, so I was really excited for it. In this book, we have our main character, Rin. She is a war orphan in a Chinese-inspired fantasy world where well-off young people study for basically their whole lives to take this huge exam to get into the country's elite military academy. Rin, as a war orphan, does not study her entire life. She only has like a year or two or something like that. She studies very hard. She gets into this academy, but that is just the beginning of her trials and tribulations, of course. She wanted to get into the academy to get out of an arranged marriage, so she's basically willing to do whatever it takes once she's there to prove herself. And before she can actually fully complete her training, if I remember correctly, another poppy war breaks out in the country. And then Rin's power and strength are truly tested. So this started off pretty good for me. I basically kind of felt the same way that Elliot and Connor O'Brien also. Like the first part was pretty good. I was digging it. I was like, yeah, okay. I still wasn't like obsessed though, like even in the first part. And I think it's mostly because for me personally, I didn't really like Rin. And it's not like, oh, she's not a likable person. Like, you guys know how much I love Andi Darkin. Lada is not a likable character. Like, she's not a nice person. Like, she's awful. She's a bitch. And that wasn't the thing here. I just wasn't connecting with Rin. I just didn't really care about her. And without getting into spoilers, basically towards the end, I personally just felt like the plot went haywire. It just was kind of all over the place for me. There were scenes that were irrelevant, didn't need to be there, and way too convenient. And then the very end, like, Rin was just such a hypocrite. Again, without giving spoilers, she just was a terrible hypocrite. And I couldn't get behind it. And I felt like at the end we were supposed to be very like, yeah, Rin is gonna get her vengeance and her revenge and this is gonna be badass, fuck yeah. And I just was like, you're such a hypocrite and I don't really care. Like her integrity was whack and I didn't appreciate it. And I see why some people love it. It's very dramatic and trigger warnings or what have you for rape, torture, murder, slaughter, genocide, all the things. My rating for this on my 1 to 10 scale, 5.5, which translates to 3 Pushinicorns. I will be unhauling this. If I don't care about a character, man, it's really hard for me to care about the book. So there we have it. Those are the books that I read the end of June and then in July up to Booktubeathon. Okay, that is all for now. Thank you so much for your time, guys, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.